The knock came just after midnight, 4 hard raps on a door no one had touched in weeks. When Tom Harlan opened it, there were no men on the porch, just 5 arrows stabbed into the dirt, pointing at the grave he dug that morning. It had begun the day before, when the sun hung like a brass plate in the sky and the air turned to syrup over the Llano Estacado. Tom was riding the fence line on his lopsided sorrel, Ginger, the kind of Texas gelding that had seen more drought than rain. He was halfway through patching a downed section of barbed wire when Ginger snorted, ears pricked toward a cluster of yuccas on the ridge. Then came the buzzards, 6 of them, maybe more, circling slow, low, like something had just died and hadn't been found yet. Tom squinted. He was half a mile from the old Santa Fe trail, used less each year, but close enough that the scavengers might have sniffed out something foul. "What did they find, girl?" he asked the horse, clicking his tongue. He rode up slow. The smell hit first, sweet and sour, like rotted hide soaked in mesquite. And then he saw him. A body, slumped against a rock like it had just sat down to rest, skin darkened by sun and days of stillness, hair in 2 long braids, a long hunting knife still sheathed at his hip, untouched. Tom stepped down and knelt. No signs of a fight, no bullet hole he could see. Just the man's hands, weathered, calloused, and folded across his chest like he'd chosen the spot to die. He was Comanche. That much was certain, maybe mid-30s, maybe older. But what made Tom's stomach twist wasn't the death. It was what lay beside the man, a medicine pouch, open, and inside it, 3 objects, a carved elk horn, a stone pipe, cracked, and a strip of bark etched with markings Tom couldn't read. He knew better than to take them. But he also knew better than to leave a man in the open sun to rot like roadkill. So he did the one thing no one else would have. He buried him on a quiet slope overlooking the dried riverbed, dug the grave himself, used his hat to shade the man's face as he worked, said a few words when it was done, not that the words mattered, just the silence afterward. And then he laid the pouch on top. "Ain't much," he whispered, "but it's decent." By the time he rode home, the shadows had gotten long and the wind had gone weird. Cold, but only in certain pockets, like it was sneaking up behind him. He didn't say much that night, just boiled coffee and sat on his porch, watching the moon rise like a silver coin over the buttes. Until the knock, 4 raps, sharp, intentional. Ginger whinnied from the barn. Tom opened the door, no one there, but at his feet, 5 arrows, not scattered, not dropped, stuck upright in a perfect half circle, pointing back down the trail, toward the grave. The next morning, he found the first sign, a fresh print. Moccasin, narrow heel, small, a woman or a youth. He followed the prints until they vanished in the hardpack. No horse tracks, no boot marks, just the sign of someone walking barefoot across open Texas and leaving no scent behind. And the grave? Untouched. But beside it now, arranged in a crescent, were 7 white stones, not native to this area. Tom crouched, chewing his lip. He hadn't told anyone about the burial. Hell, he hadn't seen another soul in days, so who had? That evening, just as the sun kissed the rim of the canyon, Ginger went wild in the paddock. Rearing, snorting, white-eyed, Tom grabbed his rifle, stepped outside. Nothing. But the air carried a new smell, like wet sage and smoke, something earthy, old. And when he turned toward the grave again, he saw them. Just silhouettes. At first, 3 riders on the ridge, not moving, just watching. He raised his hand, slow, peaceful. They didn't wave, didn't flinch. Then one rider raised a single arm, holding the pipe from the medicine pouch, and then they turned their horses and vanished into the dusk. What would you do, watching shadows come for the bones of a man you tried to honor? Would you run? Or stand by the grave you dug? Because Tom didn't run. He lit a fire, sat outside, and waited to see if the dead stayed buried. That night, the wind never stopped. It howled low through the cottonwoods like a mourning song, carrying grit and whispers that made Tom Harlan's scalp prickle. He didn't sleep, not really. Just sat by the fire with his Winchester across his lap and a mug of black coffee shaking slightly in his hand. When dawn finally broke, it came slow and pale, like the sun wasn't sure it wanted to rise on what was left behind. Tom walked back out to the grave. The stones were still there, 7 white markers untouched, but something else had been added, a single red feather stabbed point first into the mound. He crouched beside it. It wasn't from any bird he recognized, longer than a hawk's, narrower than a crow's, and clean, fresh. He touched the earth, still packed the way he'd left it, not disturbed, not dug up, but it had been visited. "You came back," he muttered. "But why?" The question gnawed at him, not just why they came, but why they hadn't taken the man, or the pouch, or the body. Why leave the feather? By noon, he'd saddled up and ridden out to old Elias Drake's trading post, 30 miles southeast. Elias was the closest thing to a mouthpiece between Comanche bands and white settlers for 100 miles. Half Cherokee, half liar, and fully the kind of man who heard things before others even knew to listen. Tom didn't waste time. "I buried a Comanche man yesterday," he said as Elias ladled stew into a tin bowl. "Didn't see signs of a fight, just found him sitting under a ridge. Looked peaceful. Might have been sick." Elias didn't look up. "You touch anything?" "Just moved his pouch back on top after burying him." Elias paused, set the ladle down. "What was in it?" Tom listed the items, the cracked pipe, the horn, the bark with symbols. The old trader went still at the last one. "You remember those markings?" "Number just lines and dots, maybe half circles, not letters." Elias leaned back, lips tight. "That bark was probably a death song, a message. Sometimes they carve the journey, like a map for the spirit world. Sometimes it's a warning to the living." Tom frowned. "So what do they want?" "Could be thanks," Elias said. "Could be they think you interrupted something. Some tribes believe burial by the wrong hands traps the soul, keeps it from crossing. They might come to undo what you did." Tom exhaled slowly. "I was trying to honor him. I believe you, but they might not care." "So what would you do, Elias? Dig him back up?" The old man gave a dry chuckle. "I'd wait. See what else shows up." That night, Tom did just that. No fire this time. He sat by the window with the lantern dimmed low, watching the grave from behind the tattered curtain, and just before midnight, the shapes returned. 5 of them, on foot, moving like shadows, not a sound. They circled the grave. One knelt and touched the stones. Another knelt in prayer. One held a small drum but didn't play it. They stood in silence for what felt like hours. Then one raised their hand and placed something beside the red feather. A bone charm. Then they left, disappearing without a word. Tom didn't sleep again. By the 3rd day, the mood on the land had changed. The birds were quiet. The wind hung heavy, like a blanket soaked in sweat. Even Ginger seemed different, nervous and hesitant, walking tight circles and refusing to face west. And that's when the real trouble began. Tom heard a rifle crack in the distance, then a second, closer. 2 quick shots, then hoofbeats. A rider came fast down the trail, dust rising like smoke. It was Jeb Sloan, a ranch hand from 30 miles north. He was half falling out of his saddle, bleeding from the thigh. Tom caught him before he hit the ground. "What happened?" Jeb gasped, clutching his leg. "Ambushed. My wagon. Thought it was just riders. But they weren't after cattle. They asked for a name." "What name?" "Yours, Tom. They asked if the man who buried the spirit lived this way." Tom patched him up. Didn't say much. But inside, something twisted. This wasn't about honor anymore. It was about something unfinished. Maybe he'd buried the man in the wrong place. Maybe he'd stepped into a ritual not meant for settler hands. Maybe that strip of bark hadn't been a death song. Maybe it had been unfinished business. What would you do if your kindness drew spirits instead of peace? Would you protect the land or return the dead. Tom knew what he had to do. He saddled Ginger, packed a shovel, and rode out to the grave. At dusk, the shovel bit the earth with a soft thunk. Tom Harlan didn't want to dig, but he dug anyway. Each scoop of dirt felt heavier than the last, not just from weight, but from the weight of what it meant. He was disturbing a grave he'd built with care, a grave he thought would bring peace. Now, with every stroke, it felt more like he was peeling back something sacred, or cursed. The wind died as he worked. No insects, no birdsong. Just the dull scrape of steel and the pounding of his own guilt. He stopped when he saw the edge of the blanket, still wrapped tight. The pouch was there too, just as he'd left it. Only now the red feather was gone, replaced with a sprig of burning bush, fresh. Someone had been here before him, maybe hours, maybe minutes. Tom sat back on his heels. "What are you trying to tell me?" he muttered. The grave was dry, the body untouched by rot. That wasn't natural. It had been 4 days, maybe more. He reached in, hesitating, then pulled the pouch free. Inside now was something new, a flint arrowhead. Not just any point. This one was black, obsidian, polished, too pristine to be ancient. It hadn't been buried with the man. It had been given to him, or to Tom. He stood there under the darkening sky, unsure what came next. Then he heard it. Not hoofbeats, not voices, a whistle, low, high, rhythmic, like wind through hollow reeds. It was coming from the ridge, and from the ridge they returned. 8 this time, on horseback, dressed in war paint though no weapons drawn, their faces unreadable in the dusk. The lead rider dismounted, walked down toward Tom with steady, deliberate steps. He was old, hair silver, braided into loops. His tunic was stained with clay and ochre. Around his neck he wore a fang, human-sized. They stood 5 feet apart. Then the elder pointed at the grave, pointed at the pouch in Tom's hand, and spoke. "You buried him well." But his spirit did not rest. Tom swallowed. "Why?" The man tilted his head, then pointed to the bark scroll still tucked inside the pouch. "You did not read the path. The path is not for your eyes." Tom nodded, shame heating his face. "I didn't mean to offend." The man stepped closer, laid his hand gently on Tom's shoulder. "The dead are not angry, but they are not done." He gestured to the arrowhead. "You carry it now, so you finish it." And just like that, they left. No war cries, no curses, no violence. Only one final glance from the elder as he vanished into the shadows. Tom didn't sleep that night. He sat beside the opened grave, staring at the arrowhead in the moonlight. It was warm to the touch, like it had been held or used. Then he remembered something Elias Drake once said, back when they'd both been younger, dumber, and drunker. "Some warriors die with their last hunt unfinished. Spirits wander till someone finishes the kill or buries the truth." Could that be what this was? Was the dead man chasing a mark when his spirit failed him? Or worse, had someone betrayed him? The next morning, Tom rode west. He didn't know where exactly, but he followed signs. Broken branches, scorched rocks, strange markings on trees, arrows etched backwards, a symbol Comanches sometimes used for unfinished journeys. By dusk, he reached a dry wash near the canyon wall. That's where he found the camp. Abandoned, days old, maybe more. But something was left behind. A broken rifle stock, carved with the same symbol from the bark scroll. He picked it up, and underneath it, beneath a loose slab of stone, was a shallow grave. Fresh. The bones had been disturbed, picked at, not buried with care. Tom knelt, closed his eyes. Something passed through him, a chill, then heat. And in the wind, he swore he heard it. Finish the hunt. What would you do holding a dead man's final clue in your hands? Would you ride deeper into ghost country, or walk away and never look back? Tom Harlan rode east with the arrowhead tied to his saddle horn, and as the sun dipped low, a single figure stepped onto the trail ahead, the man with the fang around his neck, waiting. The old man stood in the middle of the trail like a ghost summoned by dust. He didn't move, didn't flinch. Just watched Tom Harlan approach like he'd been expecting him. The silver braid down his back swayed slightly in the breeze. That same human-sized fang hung from his neck, catching a flash of dying sun. Tom reined Ginger to a stop. "I found the grave," he said. There were signs of struggle, scattered bones, a rifle. The elder nodded once. Then he reached beneath his robe and pulled out a worn strip of buffalo hide, unfurled it. On it, painted in ochre and black, was a map, the same markings as the bark scroll. At the center, 2 jagged hills, a crooked tree, a snake curling around them. "Final place," the man said. He was tracking a killer, one who betrayed kin, but he died before his task. So now, he pointed to the arrowhead, you finish. Tom didn't argue. He understood now. The burial was never meant to be the end. It was the beginning. By the next nightfall, Tom found it, just where the map said. 2 hills shaped like teeth, the dead tree. And under it, an old camp dug into the slope, a hidden hollow. Still warm coals. He drew his Winchester, approached on foot. Inside were 3 men, rough-looking, trail-worn. One had a scar like a forked tongue down his cheek. They didn't see him at first, but the moment the wind shifted and carried his scent, Scar Tongue spun around, rifle half raised, too slow. "Drop it," Tom barked. They hesitated, then obeyed. The next few minutes felt like hours. Tom herded them into the open, made them sit. Then he saw it, the second pouch, near their gear, almost identical to the one he'd buried. "Where'd you get that?" Scar Tongue spat. "From a dead man. He owed us silver, got what was coming." Tom felt heat crawl up his spine. "You rob him." "We buried him," another man offered. "You left him in the open like a dog," Tom growled. "You didn't bury him, you looted him, left his spirit wandering, and now I'm here to finish it." The 3 looked at each other, uneasy now. Tom pulled the obsidian arrowhead from his coat and drove it into the dirt between them. "Pick it up." No one moved. "Pick it up." Scar Tongue reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the arrowhead, the wind changed. A gust tore down the gulch like thunder, howling past them. Then came the sound, hoofbeats, from every side. Tom didn't even flinch. The men scrambled to their feet, panicked. "What is this? Who's coming?" one of them shouted. Tom backed away slowly. "The dead ride tonight." Over the ridge, shadows emerged. Riders, dozens, silent, painted, eyes like smoke. They weren't flesh and blood, but they were real. Scar Tongue screamed. The others ran. Tom didn't move. He stood beside the grave of justice, rifle at his side as the riders thundered past him. No harm came to him. Only the guilty were chased, and they were never seen again. When dawn came, the canyon was still. The air light again. As if a weight had lifted. Tom walked back to the crooked tree, dug one more grave, this time with his hands. No shovel, no shortcut. He laid the arrowhead inside along with the second pouch. "You finished your journey," he whispered. "Rest now." The wind rustled the dead branches gently, almost like an answer. 3 weeks later, Tom returned home to his ranch. No more midnight knocks, no more arrows in the dirt. Ginger was calm again. The land felt like it had exhaled, and at the grave where it all began, someone had added one last thing. A circle of feathers. 7 red, 1 black. Tom didn't touch them, he just tipped his hat and rode on. Because sometimes, in the wild places beyond the law and the railroad, justice takes the long trail. And when it rides through, it don't always wear a badge.